Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here after the Toronto Blue Jays drop Game 2 of the World Series to Yoshinobu Yamamoto and the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And before we get into it, if you could take a second to like and comment and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, we would really appreciate that. And if you are listening on the audio provider of your choice, we'd love a follow and review. I also, before we get into things, Jory, I do want to apologize to anybody who was listening to yesterday's episode for uploading the the Game 6 Mariners reaction instead of the Game 1 Dodgers reaction pod. Got that all straightened out eventually, but yeah, appreciate getting that flag from Jeff that there was a mix up about the audio there. But on a more somber note, I suppose, the Toronto Blue Jays drop Game 2 of this series because Yoshinobu Yamamoto goes CG and allows 4 hits and 1 run.
Yeah, this one a decidedly less enjoyable podcast for us to do, I think. Tough. I'm big on the props. I got the Leafs jersey when Vladdy came in with it. I got the baseball caps all along the back there. I don't know if you could see them. And if I wasn't so lazy, I'd grab one and give him a little tip at the cap because what are you gonna do, man? Second complete game of the postseason for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. The Jays were eating out of his palm. They had two hard hit balls all night and didn't pick up a hit after, I believe they said it was the third inning. Just completely dominated by Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And, it sucks, but you head back to Los Angeles, tied 1-1. I think. I think you're okay with that, even if you wish that you were up 2-0.
Gonna be a good series. I think we were kind of anticipating that all along, and for Yamamoto to come out here and do this again after he had just done it in his last postseason start, obviously very impressive there. Um, Gausman was really good on the other side of the ball too, and it was kind of, things were going back and forth there. Even Gausman after the game, I think he said, I knew that he was pitching well because it seemed like I was running back on the field pretty quickly. So, both guys were rolling, and I mean, if you're the Blue Jays, I think, you kind of look at they put some pressure on early, and then kind of he adjusted to them and was able to kind of hold them down. You mentioned no hits after the third inning. And I think it was he retired the last 20 batters of the game. Like it's going to be tough to win a game when that's going on.
The Dodgers spent $1 billion, give or take, on their rotation, and as such, you're gonna run into Yoshinobu Yamamoto's and those of the like when you're going up against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The way that the Jays are gonna win, as we've said repeatedly, is that they're gonna have to get to the Dodgers bullpen, and the way to get to the bullpen is to get to the starter, and that was just not in the cards for this one. I thought the Jays, early they made Yamamoto work, right? I mean, even, by the third inning, they tied it. And it seemed like we were going to, have a game. And even by, the sixth inning after that controversial Jonas Brothers concert, I kind of said to the people I was watching with, I said, there's going to be one big swing here, and that's going to be the difference. And we roll around to the seventh, and Kevin Gausman has basically made one bad pitch to that point, a double to Freddie Freeman. Even outside of that, I think the RBI was like a splitter down and away off the plate. Hard to be too upset with, that run. And Will Smith just sends that ball into orbit. And even the Muncy homer to make it 3-1, even that pitch, it just squeaked off the end of his bat and carried and just kept carrying until it got out of there. And that ultimately spelled the end for Kevin Gausman, who really had a strong outing regardless. He was of no fault here. Despite the 5-1 final, this one was a lot closer than that score would indicate. It was just a case of a pitcher's duel that as the game progressed, the Jays just didn't have the means to match what Yoshinobu Yamamoto was offering them. And when you're talking about a guy that's probably going to finish top three, at the very worst, top five in Cy Young voting, there's no easy pitching in the World Series, but this one in particular was just real tough. And as a result, the Jays just couldn't muster anything.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday Blake Snell, it was his 17th career start against the Blue Jays, and today was Yoshinobu Yamamoto's first career start against the Blue Jays. So, we've talked all along about the Trey Savage surprise factor, and obviously, the Blue Jays, I'm sure, have been preparing for Yamamoto for a while, at this point. But and, like sometimes it's hard to replicate the real thing, and he was in there, he did a good job, like 17 swings and misses. I think. I was kind of pulling this up, like individual pitchers that have made the Blue Jays swing and miss 17 times or more in a game this season. It only happened four times, and it was Logan Gilbert in April, Yuri Perez in August, Blake Snell in August, and Tanner Bybee in June. So, obviously not something that we see all that frequently with this offense. And I mean, obviously he looked good and he kind of settled in. I think early on they had a chance to like really kind of, you know, put take advantage of the situations that they put themselves in, right? I think of the first inning where once again, they kind of do the same thing that they did against Snell. Springer leads off with a double. Lucas singles, he goes to third, and then you go strike out. Kirk has the hard hit line out to Freeman, which of course, is an RBI if he hits it like anywhere else on the field. And then Varsho strikes out looking. And then in the third, Springer gets hit by the pitch. Vladdy hits the 113, is that how hard it was? Mile per hour single off the left field wall. That was just, one of these classic like Vladdy low lining balls that pushes Springer to third, and then of course Kirk brings Springer in and ties it. But like that's a couple situations where you have runners in scoring position with one out or less, and they aren't able to capitalize on it, right? And in situations like this where you're gonna, you let Yamamoto kind of settle in and cruise, it does come back to bite you.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just pulling up the stats here. We're looking for starting pitchers to, make the Jays whiff like this. Infrequent. It's a little difficult for me to track it down exactly. But yeah, I mean, you said they whiffed how many times this evening?
17.
Yeah, like it's not something this team really has done all that often, I think, to me, again, it's just a case of just like you said that they had their opportunities early. They did get to him in spurts, but it's just sometimes you just can't do it against the pitcher that's of this talent.
Yeah.
And Yamamoto's of that upper echelon of pitcher. Sometimes you're just going to get diced up and have to take it.
Yeah, I will say, like, if you think about the Blue Jays in this postseason, looking back at the games that they've lost in the Yankee series was the error fest where they kind of beat themselves that way, right? And then in the Mariner series, there's games one and two of the CS, and I still don't think that we really have a reasonable explanation for kind of why those ones played out the way that they did. Obviously, the game one, Gausman, and then he pulls and Little gives up the single and all this stuff, and then they get blown out in game two. And then the third loss in the Mariner series was obviously the Brendan Little late game collapse. Like this one to me is the most, like, I don't want to say that they got beat, right? But it's the one where I think that they had the least amount of like self-inflicted wounds. Like it was just a good pitcher, it was a good baseball game, and it comes down to a couple swings, right? So and I mean that's kind of what you're going to expect in the World Series.
Just again, we love to reference Sportsnet stats over here. Big fans of the work Steve Fallon does. Toronto Blue Jays hitters swing and miss this season, or excuse me, this postseason. The ALDS, it was 20.6%. ALCS, it was 20.9%. Game one, it was 17.6%. And then tonight, 30.4%. So just
Yeah.
a totally out of character game from the Blue Jays hitting. Um, Again, sometimes you just get beat.
Yeah, I mean that's why you pay a guy like Yamamoto $325 million is to deliver performances like that, right? So let's move on to Gausman because obviously his first career World Series start in what has been a pretty solid career at a multi-time All-Star for him, and as Yamamoto was going about his like 20 retiring 20 in a row, Gausman was also retiring guys in a row. He did 17 in a row before the Smith homer kind of broke that up, and obviously he falls behind early. He gets Shohei and Mookie, and then Freddie doubles and Smith singles, and neither of them are particularly well hit balls, so tough to really fault Gausman. And I thought it was funny after the game, he was kind of saying I didn't do enough or I wasn't good enough kind of thing. But like, I mean, I think if the Blue Jays win this game, like let's say even if Gausman gives up the homers, comes out and the Blue Jays win, say 6-3, like Gausman is probably still like a major story in this, and we're probably celebrating like just how dominant he was.
Yeah, this was a great outing by him. I would argue that this may have been, if not his best outing of the postseason. You look at his stuff against the Yankees, maybe his second best. Certainly, I mean, went longer than he'd gone in any other starts, right?
Yeah.
It was a really exceptional outing for him. And the offense just ultimately wasn't able to really do anything with what he provided them. And there's if there's one thing to take away, I think you can feel a little bit more confident that, if this thing does get to the point where Gosman's got to start again, we're looking at maybe like a game six or even a game five if we're looking at maybe the Jays choose to shuffle things around with rest or anything like that. The way that he was able to handle these Dodgers, as much as you don't love the thought of Yamamoto facing you again, I don't imagine that the Dodgers are all that excited by the prospect of facing Gosman again.
Yeah, I think you're putting it like a maybe. I think it was definitely his best outing of the postseason. I think just kind of the control that he had, like the flow that he was in, the pace that he was working with was really good, and it seemed like he was I think Keegan tweeted out like he's pitching with a little bit of an edge, which is nice to see. And I mean, obviously, from where I was sitting in the auxiliary press box, I moved a couple rows back today, so like further away view, but I actually had like a more clear view. But obviously, like kind of tough to see like how the stuff is playing from there. But I mean, I'm sure that it looked great. I think the splitter returned like a 62% whiff rate. So Gausman, he was early on. I mean, I think you look at Gausman when he's getting called strikes with his fastball, that he's on because the team is sitting there like waiting for a splitter, and then he gives them a fastball at the bottom of the zone. They take it. He had 17 called strikes with his fastball today, so I think that's a pretty good sign that Gausman was on. So,
Yeah, he
um,
was excellent. And the other thing too, the velo. He was touching 96. Did he flash 97?
he did not,
He
but
did not, but he definitely his velo was up, and as a result, he looked the part, right? It's a shame to like waste this start from him, but he did everything in his humanly possible power, everything but go yard off of Yamamoto himself.
there's only one guy that's doing that, and he's starting game four.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough because like the game actually kind of flew by. Like this was by far the quickest game of the postseason for the Blue Jays. At least that's what it felt like as, kind of things go back and forth and they're running out there. It's Yamamoto, it's Gausman, it's Yamamoto, it's Gausman, it's three up, three down, it's three up, three down, it's three up, three down. Kind of outside of those two, I mean, the Smith and Muncy homers, like Smith has a nice game. The Muncy homer, you already mentioned, like not a towering blast, like kind of a side spinner that sneaks over the wall. And as far as the Blue Jays offense, I mean, for you, like watching it on the TV, like what was Yamamoto doing that kept the Blue Jays so off balance?
I think it was just the mixing and matching. I think the Jays would be looking for the splitter. He'd throw the curveball. The Jays were looking for the curveball. He'd go with the fastball. They were looking for pitches out. He'd come in. He'd come looking for pitches in. He'd work away. It was just they were talking on the broadcast about the six pitch mix, and he really just kind of had the Jays floundering all game. They just couldn't time him up. They couldn't tag him. And there was, the one AB against Vladdy where he crushed a ball off the wall. And he'd gone to basically Yamamoto, that is, had gone to, something to the effect of splitter, 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 fastball, splitter, splitter. He basically was using two pitches and kept targeting the same spot. And eventually, Vladdy, adjusts and pulls his hands in and hits a rocket off the wall, right? But that was the outlier. The Jays were struggling to really try to basically time him up and basically predict what was coming. And as a result, they were eaten out of his palm. It was a real opportunity for Yamamoto to just kind of mix and match, and the Jays just did not have the means to fight back. This is a Jays team that, even when they fall behind in counts, they still battle. And they weren't even able to do that because they were constantly behind in counts and then were left basically whiffing at air, as we kind of outlined. They weren't able to foul off pitches. They weren't able to make life difficult for Yamamoto because he just had so much to offer, and it was so difficult for them to get to him. Now, this is a little bit of kind of moving into the kind of a game three preview. And Glasnow's not going to have that kind of offering, right? So I think the Jays stack up okay offensively there. But when you're looking at, Yamamoto versus Glasnow is still an extremely talented pitcher in his own right. But, this is probably an anomaly for this Jays team. As we kind of rhymed off the numbers, this hasn't been the Jays team we've seen all postseason. It's not the team we've seen all season as a whole. This is not a Jays team with a lot of swing and miss. They're a hard team to strike out. So, sometimes the opposing pitcher just completely dices you up, and he's like a Cy Young candidate. And you just, again, as much as we hated the tip the cap stuff last season, I feel like it's a little different tipping your cap to Yoshi Yamamoto as opposed to, you know, XYZ minor league, journeyman
Easton
on the
McGee.
exactly on the Cleveland Guardians or
I will
whoever.
never I will never forget Easton McGee. What a legendary performance he had, almost no hitting the Blue Jays in his first career start. Um Yeah, I mean, it's like just an incredible pitcher's duel, like right, like it's just you want to go through like Sarah Lang's Twitter and you can just read off like 1,000 tweets about how special Yamamoto was. It was the first game in postseason history where both starters retired 17 plus consecutive hitters in the same start. Obviously Yamamoto, he went CG against the Brewers and then does it again here. Um, yeah, it's a really good start. And one thing, I mean, you pointed this out to me. I didn't quite see this like as it happened, but so obviously Springer gets hit by the I think it was 95.6 or maybe 96.5 or some pretty fast fastball. Um if you want to call it that. And then in his next at bat up, he swings through a pitch and strikes out and kind of comes off looking sore, showing some pain. Obviously, I didn't see that, but you did. Like how much of a concern do you think that was? Like how much did he look like he was feeling it?
He walked back to the dugout. He didn't seem too concerned, but it's just, again, this is a guy that's so beat up. He's dealing with a bum knee. We've heard from, like Varsho. He's dealing with a bum hand and stuff. And now, you add this to the list. He's fighting through it. And, it's the World Series. Everybody's battered and bruised. And, I would expect that you probably aren't going to see him coming out of the lineup. I wonder how the mix of him and Bo is going to go, especially if he's still so beat up like this. It's a little different, right? It's not the knee, it's not the hip, it's not anything like that where you're in the outfield and it's so critical, but it's still going to factor into ultimately his capabilities, right? You get drilled by a pitch on the hand, or, it was right around kind of the upper forearm. Yeah, you're going to feel that. That's going to leave a mark. The concern, I guess, is the reaction afterwards, right? Because he swung and he swung hard. But if you recall, kind of during Game 7, or maybe even been of Game 6, he was swinging at pitches, and then he'd go down like a knee and he would grimace, right? And you could see he was uncomfortable. And it was kind of that energy from him. It was that sort of, oh, that doesn't feel right. And you just hope it's not going to linger. And if it does, it could spell disaster for the Blue Jays. But, as of now, I don't think we heard anything post game concerning. It didn't seem like there was anything too kind of much to really flag, but it's postseason, nicks and bruises, you just kind of have to fight through them. And, you hope that this one isn't too detrimental, basically, is I think the long and short of things.
Yeah, his first inning double. I mean, we like they fall behind 1-0 in the first inning again. They're very good at falling behind 1-0. Um, and he comes out and kind of flips the tone with the leadoff double, which is huge. But obviously one thing that we talked about yesterday, kind of leading into the game, was the status of Bo Bichette and how we thought that he was going to play into the rest of the series. And obviously he's not in the lineup today and comes in to pinch hit for IKF and then doesn't come back out defensively. What did you kind of make of him not being in the lineup, and how much of a concern is that for you, even given what John Schneider had to say about it pregame?
Yeah, I think it's a huge concern. I tweeted about it before the game, and obviously they played it off as nothing. But after you had indicated that you kind of said it looked like he was done, and then for him to not be in the lineup the following day,
I don't know about done. But he was definitely feeling it. I just, it's interesting, like with Springer and Bo. Um, you can't have two designated hitters. So I would wonder, like, if Bo could DH, if he's just maybe not there on the fielding side of things.
I mean, I guess we'll see, right? The fact he wasn't even used as a DH today, right? I think that's so critical as well, right? So
Yeah. It's
I don't know.
interesting
It's
because
tough.
Schneider said it was like kind of part of the plan,
Yeah, like they're
which
talking about a maintenance day, but a maintenance day in the World
in the
Series
World
is
Series,
nothing.
especially before an off day, right? Like if it's me, I feel like if you're trying to plan like an off day for somebody in the World Series, like it's probably the day in the middle of the three games, right? Like you would play. I mean, again, like it was yesterday was his first game back, so maybe it kind of was in the plans that they're like, we're gonna bring you back, and if it's not like feeling super great, then we're gonna kind of try and control it. But yeah, we'll see. I would bet I would bet he's back in the lineup on Monday. Kind of sounds like that's going to be the case, and then I guess they'll play it by ear from there. But um, it's interesting to me that he was so quickly removed from the starting nine after only playing 6 innings in game one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. You hope he's healthy enough. Would hate for this to be how his Blue Jays tenure ended,
Okay, well,
but
we don't have to go there yet, but
I
um,
don't know. We'll see. You'd like him to be healthy. You'd like him to be able to compete here, but you know, the power stroke there is it doesn't seem like it's really there. He's not really crushing baseballs. Still putting the bat on the ball, but we'd kind of, you kind of suspected that he's gonna have some problems generating, excuse me, force in the ground and just power on the whole, right?
wow, did
So,
you just drop a force plate take?
I mean, is it wrong? I think that, to me, he's a big part of his game is the big leg kick, and he's able to generate a lot of his power through that. And when you're dealing with a busted knee, I can't imagine you're able to have a lot of stability and a lot of power in that.
Wow. What a conversation to have at 3 a.m. on this podcast. I appreciate it though. I mean, I love it. I love the mechanics talk. It's great. But yeah, no, I think you're right. Like we'll kind of see how it plays out. Obviously, if they if he's not in the lineup on Monday, then that'll tell you everything you need to know. So I would guess that he is going to be back in the lineup on Monday, because then they're not going to be waving the white flag. But like we said, storylines from this game, Yamamoto, Gausman, the offense not really doing what it usually does, and then not much else because it was such a pitcher dominated game. The Blue Jays bullpen, I mean, Louis Varland comes in, isn't able to kind of pick Gausman up there in that in that inning of work that he has. Obviously, Hoffman is forced to come in with the bases loaded and one out, and immediately uncorks a wild pitch, bringing in a run. Um, so obviously not the Blue Jays bullpen's finest moment, but I think obviously they go. I think the 3 up, 3 down in the bottom of the seventh was kind of like when you realize that maybe the comeback's not going to be in the cards against Yamamoto because that's the inning where it's like it's Ernie, it's Barger, and that's where Bo pinch hits. And then, you're kind of like, oh, maybe I kind of watch this team all the time and I'm like, they got to come back. And I'm like, it's just the way that this season has gone. But I think kind of after that seventh inning, you were kind of like, all right, maybe Yamamoto's doing something pretty special here.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the Mariners series and games one and games two, and there was so much anger, I think, in me. You know, would it have been like a cherry on top to be going up 2-0 to Los Angeles? Of course it would. You'd love to have been in that spot. But if I were to give the Jays a grade over these 18 innings, probably a B plus. It's hard to be too upset. You get diced up in game two, but in game one, the offense comes out and does exactly what it did. It's you split the difference, and this is just the Blue Jays being the Blue Jays. Sometimes you're just not gonna be able to touch a guy. But we saw that the Blue Jays can hang with these Dodgers, and I don't think there's any reason to believe that this is a series that's gonna be a wrap anytime soon.
We all know that the real scoreboard that matters is the run differential scoreboard, and the Blue Jays have a positive run differential after two games.
Just ask Michael
Um,
Kay.
Sorry, I was actually incorrect. Bo stayed in the game and played second. I didn't realize that he stayed in, so I was wrong when I said that. But I guess looking ahead to Monday now, obviously they get the day off, the travel day, and they'll work out on Sunday night before getting things going. But it's Max Scherzer, so they swap the spots in the rotation. It'll be Max Scherzer against Tyler Glasnow, as we said. The Blue Jays swap the Glasnow and Bieber spots, and I don't think I hate it. I think Schneider had said something about Bieber just and his recovery, and it seems like he has kind of frequently been maybe a little bit better with like that extra day or so. So I think kind of makes sense to me. Obviously, it's gonna be a big challenge for Max, but I think good chance it's his last career World Series start. So, guy with that kind of competitive fire, I would bet that he's going to at least give them a chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, you hope he's able to keep them in it. I like that swap. I mean, I don't read too much into it, but I do think that there's benefit obviously to getting Bieber an extra day. And as I kind of said before, I think with Glass now, I think you're a lot more likely to be able to get to him than you are Shohei Ohtani. So if you want to match up pitcher for pitcher, makes sense to me absolutely to be trying to steal the Scherzer start and then go out there with Bieber and see if he can't snatch that one as well.
Yeah, Bieber against Shohei is gonna be a kind of fun one to see. It's obviously two very good pitchers like like every game in this series is gonna be. Yeah, I mean Glasnow, Scherzer. I mean, you have any expectations for Scherzer really? Like I think listening to him in his avail today, I mean, like just what a treat for one to listen to that guy talk about baseball and be in the room while he's doing it. But I think the Seattle start was so intense and so impressive that I don't even know kind of how to read into what he's going to do, like being back into a routine after taking, the DS off and kind of having that long layoff between the end of the regular season and the Mariners start.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, it's going to be a tougher start than the Mariners for sure, but if he's anywhere as good as he was as he faced the Mariners, I don't see any reason to believe that the Jays can't be in that game at the very least. For him, you're hoping for 5 innings, you're hoping for something like 2 or 3 runs, and you're hoping that you're able to get to Glasnow, you're able to get to him. Again, guy that's faced the Jays at least a healthy bit more than a Yamamoto or a Shohei. And you hope that there's a familiarity factor. You hope maybe that the lack of pitches maybe plays a factor as well. I guess we'll see, right? It's just again, there's it's funny, there's almost like less it's almost less to dissect today than there was yesterday. Just because,
Well,
you're headed to
less happened.
exactly, you're headed to LA. You're not at up 1-1. You're in the series. Series is barely just started. And I think that, even if your confidence level isn't through the roof, we're not coming on this episode being like, oh my God, I can't believe they stole two from the Dodgers at home. But you know what? You got a 1-1 split. You're headed to Los Angeles, and let's see what they've got in store.
Could they be playing for the series on Monday? Interesting concept. I mean, Sarah Langs tweeted this one out in a 2-3-2 format, which of course this World Series is. The team that wins game three, if the home team wins game three to take a 2-1 lead, they go on to win 60% of the time. And if the road team wins, they've gone on to win 75.7% of the time. So
Critical game. Critical game
critical
goes
game.
without saying.
It's gonna be fun. I mean, Glasnow, Scherzer. I mean, if you want like some really compelling pitchers, that's two guys that certainly fit the bill. So will be interesting to see, and we'll be back to recap it all. Jory, you got anything else on this game? I feel like you said, it was pitcher dominated and not a lot of offense to talk about, but Shohei, Vlad, Freeman, Mookie. I mean, how about that Freddie Freeman dropped Ernie Clement single, if you want to call it that. Yeah, you got anything else on anybody from this game?
You know what? It's is what it is, and head back to Los Angeles 1-1 and see what happens there.
Fun World Series as we were expecting, and I'm sure there's only going to be probably 12 or 13 more momentum swings before things are finally settled. But that is going to do it for us tonight here at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along in the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jory is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening, and we will talk to you after game 3.